And how do you say it? I'm going to phonetically put it in here.
Raywalt, like RAY-WALL-T. That's probably the best way.
No wonder they changed you to Aiden.
Yeah.
While this podcast will always be free, the time and effort that goes into the production isn't. Show your support and join our Patreon community today. Welcome to episode 187 of Bourbon Pursuit. I'm one of your hosts, Kenny Coleman, and this is the Whiskey Smackdown. Now, before we start talking about that and our guest today, we've got to do a little bit of news. Now, on our side, we're very happy to be able to announce that after 3 months of waiting, lots of patience, signing lawyer docs, and even going through screenings, that Bourbon Pursuit is now available on Pandora. Yes, we are the only whiskey podcast, at least at this time, as well as one of the very few podcasts out there that are on Pandora. Now, you might be thinking, one of the few, there's a lot of podcasts. Well, there's a couple hundred on Pandora. I think there's almost like 700,000 podcasts nowadays. So we're very happy to be able to bring this content to new listeners. So if you're a Pandora listener, welcome. If you are an iTunes listener and you've got friends that are on Pandora, make sure you tell them, because we always want to spread the good word of bourbon. This week, Ryan and I were back down in Tennessee picking more barrels for Pursuit Series releases. Now, in addition to that, we have also acquired, secured, and purchased our first barrels of Kentucky bourbon as well. We've sold out of episode 004. However, episodes 3, 5, 6, and 7, there's a little bit, maybe about 30 or less bottles remaining out of each one of those. You can get more information on each one by going to our website at pursuitspirits.com, and you can see all of them at /episodes. Or you can just go to sealbox.com, buy them directly, and if you can't find them, you can search for the word Pursuit inside of their website. We partner with the Kentucky Derby Museum to bring to you the Legend Series. To give you a heads up on what's coming up in the future, Thursday, February 21st, 2019 is going to be Craft Bourbon Night. It's going to be featuring Wilderness Trail, Jephthah Creed, and Peerless. On Thursday, March 21st, 2019, you're going to have Dixon Dedman, the founder of Kentucky Owl. If you want to learn more about them and go check out their website to buy tickets, it's derbymuseum.org/Legend Series. Now, Bourbon Pursuit, I think we're going on tour. Well, maybe not, but it's something like that where you get to come and see us record in person and be a part of this. We have a new partnership with the Galt House and Down One Bourbon Bar, and you can come and see us record in February. We're going to announce the date and the guest next week, but as I'd mentioned, it'll be at Down One Bourbon Bar, where you can be there having a drink, you're going to get a pair of earbuds, and you can watch us live as we record in another room with our guest. Now, in addition, this is going to be streamed live on multiple social platforms, so even if you can't be there, you can still be a part of it. We would love to meet more people that listen to the show, so please come and join us. Look for our date and our guest to be announced next week on the podcast, but as well, it'll be announced late this week or early next week, whenever it is, on our social media channels, so make sure you're following there. Now, another thing is that Bourbon Pursuit is also going to be in person at the Louisville Bourbon Society meeting that'll be taking place on March 18th. If you've never been to the Bourbon Society meeting before, your first meeting's free, and you can bring a guest. So this is your chance to come see us in person, because we're going to talk about the history of the podcast, some of our best and even worst interviews, and even get to sip on some Pursuit Series as we bring bottles for everybody to share. Get more information about location at their Henry Clay, as well as door opening times and more at thebourbonsociety.org. Bourbon enthusiasm, it knows no bounds. It stretches across demographics, races, ages, and even professions. And if you're like me, then you've had some fascination with WWE or old school WWF wrestling at some point in your life. But you never really think that that person that's on TV during Smackdown or WrestleMania doing headlocks or jumping off the top rope would ever be in my house drinking bourbon with me. Now, Matt Raywalt, or better known as WWE superstar Aiden English, he hustled his for a career, and he caught a few lucky breaks along the way. And now he's finding a new passion in bourbon as he begins his Wrestling with Whiskey Instagram and YouTube series. And as fate would have it, Matt was in town for a live event, so Fred and I took the opportunity to invite him over and talk about wrestling and whiskey. We talk about his career, personal life, and of course, when bourbon became that obsession, as well as maybe why we don't see alcohol as big as a part of WWE character development too. And now make sure you always follow us on all of our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Bourbon Pursuit to see what we're posting about, what we're drinking, where we are this week, or heck, this past week we went live and did a Facebook Live review last Friday of Old Forester Rye and New Cooper's Craft. So that's an opportunity for you to just kind of see what we're up to and get those notifications. So make sure you do that. Now with that, enjoy this week's episode. Here's a quick message from Joe at Barrell Bourbon, and then you've got Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
Joe from Barrell Craft Spirits here. Barrell Craft Spirits is more than just bourbon. We blend rye, whiskey, rum, and our signature Infinite Barrel project. Find out more at barrelbourbon.com.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. This week I want to start with a listener email from Stephen Belser. Fred, I've got an idea for an Above the Char. Can you talk about there is more and more discussion releases of rare limited edition bourbons, and how that may be detracting from the nature of bourbon? I think next to ambulance chasing lawyers, there sits a place in hell for advertisers. I think the advertisers are taking over bourbon too much and making it more of a cash cow operation, and to hell with the craft. It's turned me off so much that I just don't care to read any bourbon news, because I don't want to be inundated by the sale of releases that I'll never be able to get. I could just be the old man yelling at the sky, but I'm 37, so maybe I'm the middle-aged man yelling at the sky. Anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts. By the way, I've had your Bourbon Curious book for years, and it is great. Thanks for writing it. Well, thank you for the email, Stephen. And you kind of hit on a lot of points there that I really would like to address. You know, first of all, this limited edition phenomenon, it started 15 years ago. And what would happen is people would go in and they would buy the bottle they wanted. Sometimes they would have to compete with one or two people. And then there was lines for it. And then we started seeing raffles and lotteries. And now retailers have decided to, mark up products to kind of take care of that supply and demand issue. And there's really no answer other than the supply and demand is just out of whack right now. The demand is for the Pappy Van Winkles, the Buffalo Trace Antique Collections, the Four Roses Limited Editions, the Old Forester Birthday Bourbons, and on and on and on. And the supply just isn't there to meet it. So the question is, why are people advertising them? Now, I understand why we would talk about them in forums, or even myself would write about them, or someone else in the industry would write about them. But why advertise them? And the reason why is because they want to lure people with the bourbon they can't get, and then say, hey, well, you can't get that Four Roses limited edition small batch. Check out our everyday single barrel, or check out our small batch. And look at all the awards we've won. Now, I own media properties. I own a magazine. I am a part owner of this podcast, Bourbon Pursuit. And the fact is we take advertising. And advertising is a long and thorough industry that goes back, well into the 1700s. So this is something that, as a media owner, I do look at ads, but I cannot dictate to someone what they may choose to advertise. And if you're listening and you're an advertiser, I do think it might be smart to heed Stephen's advice. Instead of advertising the bourbons people can't get, maybe talk about something we can get. And maybe that's how we start to get our bourbon enthusiasm back, is we just kind of agree that we can't get all the limited editions, but by God, we sure can enjoy a good old dram of a 6-year-old small batch bourbon. And that's this week's Above the Char. If you're like Steven and you have an idea for Above the Char, hit me up on Twitter or Instagram at Fred Minnick. That's at Fred Minnick. Or you can visit me at fredminnick.com and shoot me an email like Steven. Until next week, cheers!
Welcome back to an episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. Kenny and Fred here today, recording at our studio, I guess you could say, here in Kenny's basement. So if you are watching the video, you see a nicer background than typically what we might have. But Fred, how you doing today?
Not bad. I'm excited to be drinking the Michter's 10-year-old you poured for me. Very generous you are, Kenny. Thanks so much.
So before we started, I said, guys, it's a little early, so anybody that's listening to this, we're recording in the morning, and figured like, well, you can't drink all day unless you drink in the morning. And then
we do encourage drinking responsibly.
Yes, we do, and bourbon's not just for breakfast anymore. So it's an all day affair. It can be. But today, we're kind of, this is a little bit different, right? We have a guest that is somebody who would actually kind of reached out a little bit. I saw them post on his Instagram story, and I started following. I'm like, who is this guy? And I'm like, holy shit! We have a WWE wrestler that actually follows the podcast.
Yeah, I actually I had drinks with Matt a while back, and we've stayed in touch, and I would say become friends. And whenever he's in a city, he'll text me. He's like, hey, is there any good liquor stores here or something like that? I'm like, and I'll give him a list of liquor stores and so forth. So this is kind of what I believe is like the next wave of like bourbon geekdom, in which we actually get to connect with celebrities who care about bourbon, not just because they're getting a check from bourbon, which to my knowledge, Matt is not. And, he's connecting to bourbon because he loves bourbon. And that is the next wave of what we will see in this mountain of bourbon growing.
So, but you're trying to just tell me it's a matter of time until he comes out with his own private label as well?
I think that's a question we should ask him. I personally think it might be I know the WWE very well. I have a friend who's like their head of corporate communications. And John Cena was actually going to write a foreword for one of my books, and he had to pull out because of the alcohol angle. So it was one of those things where they're very cautious of anything alcohol in the WWE.
Well, I think that's a good way that we could probably just tag some of those questions to our guests. So let's go ahead and introduce them. So today on the show, we have Matt Raywalt, or sometimes better known as Aiden English of the WWE Super Fandom. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thank you for having me. Look out, McConaughey. I'm the next one. Okay?
I dare say that you would probably deliver more for whatever brand you worked on than McConaughey would. And I mean that from like a passion standpoint. McConaughey, he's done some commercials and blended some things, but I think in the bourbon world, not everyone believes him.
Yeah, right. I feel like they'd have to kick me out of the distillery and everything. Like, all right, leave us alone. You've put your part in. No, let me do more. Like,
and given you could body slam him, that would be very difficult.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
That's true. I mean, he showed up and I was looking up. I was like, holy shit! I hope he doesn't punch me across the table today. But let's go ahead. Let's kind of talk first about you and whiskey, and then we'll get into some wrestling as well.
Sure.
So kind of, how'd you get into whiskey?
So I remember the first time I met up with Fred and kind of asked a similar question, like, what got you? And I'm thinking about it now, getting ready for this podcast. And I'm like, that's going to come up. What was it? I'm like, God, I don't remember. There was no crystallizing moment. But I think I remember back to, first of all, I was watching Mad Men. That's where I think it honestly started. It was something like that. And I was like, Don Draper's sitting there and they're drinking like Canadian clubs and drinking in their office and everything. And of course at the time it's like, well, that looks very slick. It looks badass. I feel like a bit of a fool, because I feel like it was people like in the 60s smoking. They saw it in movies and it looked cool and it became this whole like national epidemic. I'm like, that's not a reason to do something, but I'm like, it looked sophisticated. It looks like, I'm like, but I can't drink whiskey, not straight. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been at a bar and I shot it and followed it up with a beer or a Coke or something like that. I'm like, and I force it down, but I'm like, just be able to sit there casually, calmly sip and look at someone in the eye and tell you what you think of them and something like, I'm like, that's That's what men do, right? Like it's kids shoot it back. Men, they drink it. So I'm like, I can't do that. How do I do that? And I was in Borders, and I forgot this a while ago, but I think I remember. I think it was Lou Bryson's Tasting Whiskey book.
Oh, wow.
I saw it on the shelf because I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. And it was just like, you gotta sip it, you gotta drink it, you gotta let it sit in your mouth, you've gotta taste it. You can't just. So I was like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. And I remember I took about probably a month, and I bought a bottle of Knob Creek Single Barrel. Because I saw, I'm like, that's really high proof. Mm-hmm. If I can handle that by the end of this or whatever, I can handle most, I think, in between and everything. So I sat there with like a Coke Zero in one hand, my like glass of that, and I would take a sip, take a sip, every couple nights or whatever, until I needed less and less Coke, and until I was just doing okay and everything. And literally, it was like training. It was like working out.
It's like almost you forced yourself to do it.
A little bit, but I wanted to. And it was like working out. It's like you got to get your reps in. You stand the pain, and you'll feel better for it and everything. And I did. And then like,
hold on, wait. He just compared drinking whiskey to working out.
You guys are top athletes. You are the top of your field. You are impeccable. There should be an Olympic sport.
I was going to say, we should probably.
You guys are gold medalists in my eyes.
We can figure out a way to do the Bourbon Olympics. We got. We got at least the podium standards right here.
That's the next Bourbon and Beyond event. Is the Bourbon Olympics.
I love it. That is fantastic.
Hell yeah,
I love that.
But it was, and that's what it was, and then. So I think it was after that I was like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. This is cool. And I started looking at books. I saw Fred's books. And then I'm driving all the time. Like literally, so we're driving 3-4 hours between each town 3 or 4 times a week, every single week of the year. So listen to a lot of music, a lot of podcasts. Podcasts were big in my car. And so I was like, literally, you guys were the first one I found. I typed in Bourbon into iTunes podcasts. Up comes Bourbon Pursuit. And I'm like, okay. And I listened to the first couple episodes and was lost. You got using all the acronyms and talking about this. And I'm like, what are they? What is BTAC?
I guess we got to dial it down sometimes.
Like and everything. But it's like stuck it out and kept backtracking all the especially all the round tables and everything. I was like, okay. Oh, I get it. And like, and that's honestly, you guys kind of got me into like the community of it. So it was like, all right, and I realized it was this cool kind of big industry, but you guys got me into the community of it. And like, oh, wow, there's like a whole fandom for this. Like there is with any, like kind of in our business. I mean, there's fans. And I mean, like when we're not, Holly, we're kind of a niche thing in the WWE. And like, but it's a huge, very fervent niche. And like, I was finding Bourbon to be the same way. I'm like, whoa, there's this whole group of people who seek it out and write blogs about it, write books about it, have websites, have like people that dedicate time to this. Like anything, there's people, comic books, with TV shows, with movies, with, science fiction, all this stuff. I'm like, we're getting to this huge era, like across the board of fandom and appreciation. And like, it's not, I say this with absolute love and respect, like the whole idea of like the nerd in anything, like in being a negative connotation is like gone. Like,
thank God.
You can be a nerd about anything, and it's cool. Like, yeah, man, I'm a whiskey nerd, I'm a whiskey geek, or I'm a movie geek, I'm a candle nerd. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like, oh, okay, that's your thing. And so it was cool to see a bunch of people that interested, that dedicated, and that just committed to this whole thing. I'm like, oh, and like especially. I know I'm just rambling here, but like...
We like that.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier.
Hell yeah. But especially, like, for me, my job is so all-consuming. Because, like, 4 days of the week, 24 hours a day, I'm gone. I'm in it. We're wrestling. We're meeting fans. We're doing all this stuff. My whole life is wrestling. So if I can find something outside of that... Because, like, when I go home, I don't want to be... I love wrestling, but I don't want to be doing, all right, now I'm going to go watch 6 hours of matches and go practice moves and everything. I'm
going to play myself on PlayStation.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I have done that, though. But, yeah, I was like, it's nice to have something outside of that I can get away to and I can dive into that's kind of away from that. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, and this is the first thing in a long time. I never got like, I like video games, but I never got like into it. I love movies, but like I never was writing a blog on a site or anything about my favorite movies and stuff like that. But I cannot even explain it for whatever reason.
Yeah,
I kept going deeper and deeper.
In kind of the typical, wrestling fashion, you've now created your own whiskey persona in some ways. Is that the real you? Like when we see wrestling with whiskey, which is your Instagram handle and kind of what your a little bit of your side hustle. Is that the real you, or is that the guy that's slamming people on the canvas?
Little column A, little column B. I mean, there's a little of me in the guy who's slamming people on the canvas too. You know what I mean? Like
that's what you really do. Like, fuck you.
Yeah, essentially. That's what I get to do for a living. There's a part of me, I think there's a part of all of us that wants to be that guy who's...
Oh, I'd love to get it in the ring. As long as I could actually win. I don't want to get in there and get my ass kicked.
You can have the candy glass bottle of bourbon would be your foreign object of choice or whatever. You crack it over your opponent's head on a weekly basis.
He's got 90 decanters lined up, ready to go. And...
Just put them on a table and throw the guy through it. Glass going everywhere. But
so you had mentioned that you do a lot of traveling between all the shows, and you said they're about 3 to 4 hours between every city. Now, have these turned into 6-7 hour trips because you're stopping off the side of the road to go check out liquor stores off the beaten path? Because I know you're really getting into this and you're starting to get into hunting.
Oh yeah, so like it it doesn't turn into that because the drives are at 2 a.m. and nothing's open. But what it turns into is I get up 3 hours earlier than I need to get the gym done. So I have time between that and the show that night to go. Literally, I've spent especially in the last like 6-8 months, inordinate amount of times like, hunting around random small cities. Like I set aside, like I literally map out about 6 or 7 stores sometimes and go check them out and just see what they got. You know what I mean? Because for me, like I live in a pretty big market in Chicago. So like we get pretty much everything. So, but I'm always looking for, and I see people in Bourboner and like on these blogs all the time, never discount some of these local stores. You never know. Like I've gone into something, like we've got a couple of huge stores in Chicago, but I went into some literally tiny corner of a strip mall in, I think like Pensacola. No, was it Pensacola, Florida? Somewhere, a smaller town. Corner store, strip mall, pretty much no name. It literally just said liquor on the thing. And I know it's not a super rare release, but I found like a 10-year single barrel Bellmead. And I never see those in Chicago. Like they just don't pop up, not at the Binnies or at many of our bigger chains or anything, or even my local stores. So it was like, that's awesome. Like it doesn't always have to be a limited release or anything like that, but seeing just little things I can't find at home or store picks too is now with store picks being all the rage, I kind of have a unique opportunity to go and try a store pick from Santa Monica, California, or from Memphis, Tennessee, or from, Boston or something like that. So I can get outside my local region and like I can try single barrels from all over the country, and it's kind of a cool collection.
Has there been a store that's really connected with you? Like, like a liquor store that you're like, oh my God, I have to keep getting his store picks.
So there was one I got. The first one I got was in Memphis. Buster's Liquor in Memphis had a Russell's. That was one of the first ones on the road that I got. And I took that home, and that one was very good. And then I just also recently Blind Pig in Houston.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Blind
Pig.
Pig.
A bunch of people had recommended that one to me, and I went in there. Now, on top of that, which made it even better, was one of the first stores where you went in and like the people at the store, which they were great. And they how you doing? What are you looking? Oh, what kind of store picks do you have? Oh, we got this. Hey, do you want to try them? They had a little, learn stuff. They talked about them. They knew their stuff. They made me feel welcome. And it made me not only, it was a good pour, but they also made me feel like part of the crew and everything. So it encouraged me. I don't know whether if it was a marketing technique or what, but it encouraged me to, I want to support guys like this. So I bought a bottle there, and it was really good. But those are the two, especially in recent memory, that stuck out to me.
Nice.
So I kind of want to, we're take another hard left here, and I want to talk about you inside the ring, because maybe there's probably a good percent of your audience that may not watch it. So kind of give them an idea of how you got into wrestling, what your persona is, that sort of thing.
Sure. So, I mean, I always wanted to be a wrestler since I was a kid, and mainly because I couldn't watch it. So,
Were your parents hard asses there?
no, we didn't have cable TV.
Oh, well.
So the only show that was out there, was Monday Night Raw on USA.
You know, it's also come full circle because now everybody's just cutting the cable anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, nobody has cable TV. I don't have cable TV. I can't watch my own show. I have to wait for it to come on Hulu the next day. It's totally wild. But yeah, so like for the longest time, all my friends at school, oh, Stone Cold Steve Austin, oh, Shawn Michaels. I was like, what is going on? I need to know. Everybody's talking about this. I need to know what it is. So I found some like second run like review show on my local channel on Saturday nights that just kind of showed clips, and I was like, oh, yep, that's cool. And then I never stopped watching. Eventually it came to network TV with Smackdown in 1999, and I never stopped. I never grew out of it or anything. It never changed. It just kept growing and growing and growing. And eventually I was like, all right, I want to do it. What do I got to do it? So I had to find a school, and the WWE had a developmental system called FCW at the time in Tampa.
Before we get to that, were you already like a pretty bulky guy?
Absolutely not.
You weren't already like the shape that you're in now?
I know only the people on the camera can see. But you see this microphone pole here? If you can see a microphone stand, just imagine one in your head if you're listening. But take that and cut it in half, and that was about the size of my arm. Like, wow. No, I am a horribly skinny kid. To this day, I have to make an effort to eat enough food to maintain any kind of like size.
God damn, that must be nice.
No.
See, no, you know what? I'm gonna nip this one in the bud. I hate that. I've been getting that since college.
All right.
It's funny, but like I owe people like, God, you can't say. I couldn't say that around girls in like college. They were like, ugh. I hate you.
Yeah.
But like for me, it's almost a similar struggle to people who are trying to like lose weight. Like they have to really put the effort in. I like, watch what I eat and everything. For me, especially for what I wanted to do, I was miserable. In college, I was waking up at 2 a.m. drinking 1,000-calorie shakes to get enough calories in in 24 hours or whatever to try to put on weight and everything.
Listen, man, if I'd have known you then, I just would have gotten an IV line straight from my fat side, and you could have had all of it.
See, so. Yeah, well, hey,
he's gonna
hindsight is 20/20.
He's gonna get a crave case and some Taco Bell after this.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I had to get a buddy who got me into working out and showed me what to do and everything, and. So I got into that, and then I just went down, and my parents made me go to college. That was their one thing. They're like, they've been always super, super supportive. Whatever you want to do, they're like, but our one thing is just please go to college. I don't care what you go for. I don't care where you go. Just get a piece of paper that somebody said you went here for 4 years, and you're good for something at the end of it. I don't care what it is. So I went to Columbia College in Chicago, studied acting, because I thought, hey, if I can do acting, then that'll help me on TV later if I can get a shot doing this. And I did like stage combat and fight choreography because I thought, hey, that could kind of play into the whole world of WWE. And so once I finished
you really had this dream for a while. It wasn't just something you stumbled into.
No.
You really worked
This was the plan. It wasn't a good plan. I mean, it worked out good. Knock on wood, but like it.
Do you have a tin plate in there? Because that was like it was really hard.
I picked it up in my headphones.
Jesus.
That's him knocking.
No, I just have
knocking his head.
I just have no hair, so there's no padding there. So it's super thin. But yeah, no, I just that was the plan. That was in my head. It was just there was something that was like, man, like you can do this. There's something. It felt right. It was like You're going to do it. I don't know how. I don't know how long it's going to take. This makes sense to me more than anything has so far. Like I wanted to write things. I wanted to write poetry. I wanted to write screenplays. I wanted to act. But like I needed to do this. So I did it, and I found a training school that was being offered by that Florida Developmental System, FCW. They offered a class, rented a room off of a guy on Craigslist, stayed in his house, a stranger who, looking back now, was a terrible idea. It seemed to make so much sense at the time. Oh yeah, great price. It's right near the school I need to go to. But I lived with a stranger.
And the fact that he had cameras all over the room never did anything to you.
No, that's common in all Florida homes, right? Yeah, that's just something they do. They're very security conscious. But yeah, this strange guy. Luckily, there was another student from the class living in like the little pool house or something. So we outnumbered him. So I felt a little safer. But then I just literally did that and had a great relationship with my trainer Norman Smiley. And when the time came, he put me over to the right people and literally right place, right time. About 6 months after that, somebody called me. They offered me a job, and I couldn't believe it.
What was your first job?
I mean,
Maybe it was straight into the WWE.
It was
Or was it with,
they were
like,
developmental. So
okay,
like they owned what it's called FCW at the time. It was in Tampa, and it's like AAA baseball.
Yeah.
Hey, if we send you here first, you develop, and then we bring you up to the majors, which is the traveling main WWE roster. But while I was down there, it exploded into what this group is. Wrestling fans will know NXT, which is like this whole like third tertiary brand of WWE, and it's still kind of, like the quote unquote AAA of WWE, but it's like they've made their own thing, and that kind of started while I was there. So I got to see it grow from this unknown little like sector unto itself called FCW, explode into this actually kind of global third brand and third arm of WWE that's now a huge brand in the company.
So what is the WWE fan base? What is it? The demographics of the WWE?
That's the easiest way to say it is everybody. It especially now. I think there was an argument probably to be made, and I think especially by people who didn't fully understand the business, especially back 15, 20 years ago, that would like to tell you, it's blue collar, it's working class, it's low income people, whatever. There's a lot of stereotypes about wrestling fans. But I really think it was always a little bit more wide than that, especially if you look at like things like the television ratings and everything from some of the viewing rates of like WrestleMania 3 and 93,000 people in the Pontiac Silverdome for Hogan and Andre. Like, that's not just, a bunch of blue collar worker, whatever. I don't want to use any derogatory terms, but like the stereotypical terms people would use. That's not just them. And now, especially as we've gotten into this more global brand, this more kind of a little bit more progressive brand, it's literally, you run the gamut. And that's one thing I love about our shows is like, there's WrestleMania's got its exclusive, expensive front row seats, but most of our shows, you can get a ticket for $10, $20. Like this, we get everybody, kids, moms, parents, blue collar, white collar, doctors, lawyers, everybody in between.
So South Park did this great spoof on it.
I love that episode.
It was about 10 years ago they did this or something. And that was really, for a lot of people, was kind of the changing of the tide from like wrestling was a sport that was portraying itself, like Hacksaw Jim Duggan was actually whacking you upside the head with a 2x4, which it was. And a lot of this stuff was like, real. But that episode kind of like revealed in a lot of ways that, this is more of a choreographed sport than it is like, say, football per se. So can you talk about that to like a little bit to like the state of wrestling in terms of how it is perceived from the populace? Yeah,
and that's changed a lot, especially in the last probably 10 years, because it was especially during a lot of those early time. It was very what we like to call it was a protected business. It was, don't let the people in. Don't let them know how the sausage is made. This is our thing. Protect it. As far as the outside world is concerned, it's all real. it's great. Even in 1999, when we had The Undertaker sacrificing people on an altar and lighting it on fire, there was still this idea of like, well, don't tell them it's a show. Like this is there's a stubbornness a little bit to it. But and I don't say this just as me. Like as a company, we've kind of opened the doors. We've done documentaries. We've done all kinds of things. So like it's no longer a secret. It's a show. This is what we do. I mean, it's a TV show like any other. We just happen to, we're live every week. We're out in an arena of people. It's not all editing and sound stages and everything. It's a live television show that's action. It's action based. It's sport based.
There's storylines.
Yeah, there's storylines. It's actors who are being their own stuntmen. Because that's the other thing about it is like, yeah, we're putting on the show. Yeah, we're telling you the story. But when I get slammed by Rusev or whoever, I'm not checking out, bringing someone else out, cutting, doing. That's me. Mm-hmm. My big thing to everybody was, we know we're going to fall. Doesn't mean we're not falling. Mm. When you see me hit that mat, I'm still hitting the mat. Yeah, okay, we go over, and I know that the guy's going to lift me up. I know he's going to slam me to the mat. But I'm telling you right now, it's still happening. It's still hurting. I'm still waking up the next morning with pains in my knees and all this stuff. It's still super physical. And I think, especially now, there's finally become like an appreciation for that. Mm-hmm. I think for a long time, when especially after your Attitude Era of Stone Cold Steve Austin, when it was hot, there was a bit of a downward trend. And I think people kind of jumped back on the thing. Wrestling is quote unquote fake. It's phony, whatever. Yeah, we're a show, guys. But I think that's kind of starting to pass. People are like, yeah, we know it is. We know it's a show. But what they're doing out there is kind of wild. Like, especially guys have gotten more and more athletic. It's less about big lumbering guys just throwing people over their head. And we've got serious athletes. We've got guys flipping off the ropes, diving to the outside, throwing each other and picking each other up, like going at a pace that has never been done in the business before.
And I'm pretty sure you're all shaved and oiled up.
Fred, baby oil is no longer, kosher. It's cocoa butter. Okay? There's a little less slide to it when you're trying to pick them. It's cocoa butter. It's a little bit of water. And I'm not giving all the trade secrets. Never mind.
So, Kenny, when I
What,
when
do
Mac
you want to put cocoa butter on before we go?
I got some in my bag. I'm always prepared. Always have your bag.
To his point about like he's still hitting the ground. When he left, when I watched him, he got me front row tickets to a match, and when he left, his back was entirely red, and his chest and his arms. I mean, I'm pretty sure he had a big cut on his shoulder. I mean, it looked like the guy had been put in a dryer, and it was tumbling the whole time. I mean, it freaking looks exhausting and painful to be in that ring.
So this isn't anything new either. We were talking about it before we started recording that this has been going on for 100, 120 years where it was a carnival or a circus and people would beat the shit out of each other for a few bucks in front of people. And they said, well, we can't do that anymore. We got to sort of dial it back down and make a show out of it. So that's kind of what's still been going on.
Yeah, it's just taken that to the nth degree, really. There was more life, there was more value, really, in like let's make a show for the people, and it kind of grew into this whole thing, and then expanded from guys like that, like George Hackenschmidt, to guys like Gorgeous George and stuff in the 50s, Lou Thez, and there's still this very kind of downplayed environment. It wasn't all the lights and glitz of today, but it started coming there. People started coming out with robes and entrances and music, and Muhammad Ali. Everyone says that Gorgeous George is the one who influenced him to be so brash and so bold and everything. Like he loved wrestling, so it's like they're wrestling and the WWE and like sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it, has had these little indelible touches on like pop culture that I think people sometimes forget. And then, I mean, without saying, people like Hulk Hogan and everything, and then it's moved into this new era, like I said, with all these super athletic guys. And there's even guys who came along about 15, 20 years ago that guys like Eddie Guerrero, who is actually my wife's father, who's like, and Kurt Angle, these guys who were athletes, they were smaller, but they were athletes, and they kind of changed the business, and they've become some of the best of all time, combining everything that we've all been talking about. Now we have the athleticism and this style of wrestling from all over the world combined with the comedy and the entertainment and the drama and everything that we combined today, and it became this huge like total package, which has now kind of taken us all over the world.
You mentioned your wife. There's no doubt a lot of wrestling fans listening right now. But for those who don't know, tell them who your wife is.
Oh, yeah. So my wife is Shaw Guerrero, the daughter of Eddie and Vicky Guerrero. If you're a wrestling fan, the Guerrero family is extremely popular and very well known in the wrestling world. His father and grandfather, he's a third generation. When he wrestled, he was a third generation. His father was Gory, and they've just in Mexico and then into like Texas and all over America. All his brothers wrestled, his uncles wrestled, so like they've been all over. His cousin or his nephew Chavo still wrestling, and like so his daughter she wrestled with us for a while, and that's where I met her. I met her down in Tampa. And actually, yesterday would have been his, I believe, 51st birthday. He passed away a little while ago, and it was really sad for the whole wrestling world. It was a huge loss, just because everybody loved him.
Easily one of the top 5 wrestlers of all time.
Top 3, like that's something like you ask anyone, and especially anyone who ever worked with him, it was just like. God, they were like, he was good. He was so good. It was like you were wrestling air. Like, they were just like, it was so easy. And like, he made everything so good. And the great thing about this, there's a lot of guys who get one part of the business, but they don't get other. They're a great athlete, but they're not very funny or entertaining. They're incredibly charismatic, but they're not a good wrestler. They're not in good shape and everything. He literally, and I just said this in a documentary that WWE is going to be airing, like, had everything. Like he had this charm to him. He had this kind of cheeky smile that just kind of disarmed you, but he was vicious. He could make you laugh, and he was probably one of the best athletes on the planet. Like, just literally the total package wrapped up in one thing. And I always wish I would have had the chance to meet him.
Do you ever, like, when you were marrying into that family, were you nervous that you would be judged for your wrestling a little bit more because you're marrying into like the top wrestling tree in history?
People ask, and I'd be lying if I said no, because I mean, of course you think about it. You can't not think about it. But to me, it wasn't about that. That's at the end of the day. Is like everyone. Oh, how does it feel to be like a member of the group? It's like I don't want to push it away, but at the same time, it's like I don't feel like that honor is mine. It's my wife's. It's her sister's. It's her mom's. They can do with it or not do anything with it as they will or whatever. Like, I just happen to fall in love with the girl with the last name Guerrero. You know what I mean? Like, that circumstance, and that's great. That I happen to be a wrestler. Great, fine, but like, I'm not here to carry the torch for that. I'm proud as all hell to be associated with all of them, and to be able to know them and as a family and everything like that. But like, I'm always cautious about like, this isn't my flag to bear, kind of thing like that. You know what I mean? And it's not that I don't want the responsibility, but it's just like, it's not mine. It wasn't given to me. Like, I'll honor them in what ways that I can, but I'm not gonna. Unless that's given to me, it's not my torch to carry. It's my wife and her family's, and but I will. But of course, in everything I'll do, I'll try to I'll try to make him proud. But it's not. Yeah, it's just happenstance, man. I fell in love with the right girl.
Oh, we all have that story, right? You know, you body slam your wife, and you're like, "This is gonna last forever."
Is that not how you guys on that? No. Oh.
So I kind of want to talk about how you're gonna cement your place in WWE history, right? So kind of give people an idea of like what your persona is in the ring. You know, are you the good guy? Are you the bad guy? Are you the guy that's stealing the girls? Are you guys?
He's bad as shit. he's super evil.
Yeah, I've always gravitated with so they always say it's kind of, there's a little saying in our business that on TV, like the good guys are the jerks in real life and the bad guys are like the nicest guys in real life, because the bad guys, they're always so giving, because at the end of the day, usually it's the good guy who wins. That's the story you want to tell, and that's in 99% of media. That's at the end of the day, no matter if it takes 4 movies to tell, at the end of the story, the good guy wins. So at the end, the bad guy's the one giving. He's getting beat up. He's going to be the one making the good guy look strong. So like bad guys are always very giving, and so I think they would get the reputation of being like super nice guys and everything like that. Of course, it's a stereotype. It doesn't go to a T, but I've always gravitated to being the bad guy. Man, it's fun. It's a little easier. It's easier to get people to hate you than like you. You got to work. You got to work genuinely and work hard to get people to like you, and you got to earn it. You know what I mean? It doesn't just happen overnight. They can't put you on television and say, he's a good guy because we say so. And
he's coming out with a 2x4 and American flag pants. You know, he's got to be the good guy.
Yeah, especially with our fans. It's kind of like Bourbon sometimes. You can't just put out like a release and just be like, hey, yeah, we're something from 1812. We're the oldest thing in the country. Like, people are gonna be like, yeah, BS. You got to prove it that you're good. You know, before we buy into you. And it's the same thing with us. They're not just because you put it out there and say it's awesome doesn't mean the fans are going to buy into it. So it's a little easier to go out there and tell everyone they're pieces of crap and get them to boo you than it is to get them to love you.
So the other thing that you had mentioned earlier is these guys that are very charismatic that come out with robes, and you have this bad boy persona or bad guy persona. Have you ever thought about trying to change it? You know, you come out with your decanter of whiskey. You know, you're walking down the ramp and trying to be this madman type character inside the WWE. Are they? Think they'll splurge for that one?
I mean, never say never. That's the biggest thing in our industry. Never say never.
But don't they have so this is something that I face when John Cena was this close to writing my forward, is that they don't want to put the brand next to alcohol. You know, is it possible that we probably won't ever see you or anyone like bringing a bottle of Jack Daniels or Jim Beam as a weapon? So
it depends. Again, never say never.
Right.
And that's generally seems to be the case, and that's fine. And I get that. And we're a PG product. We're a family product.
That's true. I mean, I guess when you think about it, there's a lot of 9 and 10-year-olds that do watch this.
And so, yeah, you don't necessarily want to push a 21 plus product. And what we're trying to be considering a family show.
And frankly, the brands themselves are held by standards, within their own industry, within the industry, and by the Federal Trade Commission, that they won't push for things like that. So the WWE would basically have to have an audience that was, something like 75% over 21.
Right. And I mean, and so everything, times change, demographics change. I remember a while back, we were entertaining a beer sponsorship back in the day, and that may have been when demographics were trending a little bit higher and everything like that in higher ages. And so things change. I don't see it right now, and that's fine. And I don't need it. Like I said, you don't always have to. I like kind of having whiskey as a thing that's not work related.
Mm-hmm. All right, but let's give him a good bourbon wrestling nickname. Let's think about it and present him at the end of the show.
Oh, you don't think like Old English?
Oh, that is good.
Isn't that a malt liquor?
Wait, it is. Yeah. I think it's a 44
That was my nickname in FCW because my name was English, and one of the referees we kept making the joke about Old English, and then I was like, "That's a thing." And then I looked at them. Yeah, it's a 40-ounce malt liquor,
100 proof.
It's disgusting.
Just 100 proof.
What?
It's disgusting.
Top shelf.
So another thing is, you've really grasped on and getting into whiskey outside of wrestling, and you've got a few different media handles that you're going through. So you've got your Aiden English that's through Instagram, and you actually promote a lot of whiskey stuff through there, and trying to get people to also follow you with wrestling with whiskey. So how's that reception been of people that are following you for your workout tips or anything like that, and then you're throwing like, hey, go drink Henry McKenna? Like how's that like influencing going?
It's interesting, and I mean it's kind of like what we were just saying though. I have a decent following and fan base between like Instagram and Twitter, but I'm also, because I want to be responsible and everything with it, all of my whiskey related social media and everything, I do specify, please be 21 plus to follow and stuff like that. So that, the fact of the matter is that cuts off a large section of my audience. Cause I just looked at my demographics on Twitter, on my primary Instagram and there's a huge section of teenagers and stuff like that following from around the world and everything. So, whether they choose to listen to that 21 plus or not or whatever. So it's a slow transition, but like, I'm not trying, it doesn't have to be, I don't have a goal in mind. I don't have a number in mind. I'm just going to put it out there.
You're just having fun, man.
Yeah. This is something I'm doing the fun.
Yeah.
If you're into this, like I am, or if you're thinking about it, because that's my big message with it is that, very, very recently, I was very much and still am like a beginner in this. There's so much I don't know. And I think you guys have even addressed it on the podcast. Sometimes the community can be sometimes rough on newbies and a little.
Oh yeah. There's definitely a lot of turds out there, but at the same time, I would say, are they being rough or are they trying to educate? Because I think sometimes we get lost in what is an asshole and what is someone who's really genuinely passionate about it and just saying like, no, you shouldn't drink like this or this is how that should be drunk. It comes through, and for God's sakes, that's how I've made my limit.
100%.
So, in the learning process, bourbon people are very accepting. Unlike a lot of the people I see commenting in your Instagram feeds on wrestling who hate you and say, you suck, you shouldn't have won that match, or vice versa.
Fred, I'm the bad guy. Yeah, that means I'm doing my job. It means I'm really good.
It's really
it's like opposite
really
day. Yeah, for everyone who says I suck, which is a lot, it means I'm doing my job really good.
And then there's the kind of real creepy guy from Brazil, like, oh, you're so hot or something like that. It's like you get a lot of that kind of weird.
There's always one. There's always one.
Oh, there's more than one. There's a lot.
Have you ever been stalked?
No, thank goodness. A lot of weird messages, a lot of message requests and DMs and stuff.
Wait, so are like people sending you dick pics and stuff?
No, thank God. Well, to be fair, there's a lot of them that you can't see the picture unless you accept the message, and I don't accept the message. There could have been some lost in the shuffle there, but no, there's a lot of. I just got one the other day. Actually, it was I'm absolutely, of course, not going to name names, but it was like this guy. He thought this is a message he thought was legitimately going to like touch me and like get my support. He's like, hey. My 5-year-old son likes wrestling, and he does finishing moves to his like friends or something in our basement. Like, this is horribly dangerous. We made a YouTube channel for him. Will you watch it and everything like that? Like, so he's supporting his kid, his 5-year-old developing child. He's like, yeah, I take him to a ring sometimes and jump him off the top rope and everything. Like, and then he's like, yeah, and we were in Florida, and we snuck into John Cena's community, like closed gated community. We snuck in and took pictures in front of his house. Isn't that cool? Like, he thought this would like make me reach out to him. I'm like, what are you thinking, man? Like it is there are some wild people out there.
It is. But I mean, you use Instagram a lot, and you're very active on it. And do you look at that as a way to, first probably connect with the fans, but also let them see the real you behind the scenes that's not in the ring?
Yeah, 100%. And like, I remember I got on Instagram in like late 2015, and I was really like, I was very crotchety about it. I was very opposed to it. I fought it very hard because, like some people are like, I was literally at 25 years old. Like, I don't need that newfangled social media bull crap. These kids.
This will die off in 6 months.
Yeah, who needs this? And I was like, oh wait, this is a thing. And especially in my line of work, I'm like, oh, I need to kind of be out there. But I really took to it, especially like Instagram. I think it did. It allowed me to kind of you can tell simple stories on there, which I like. It's a picture, it's a picture with as much or as little as you want to say. And sometimes nothing at all. So I've had pictures with no caption that have gotten more responses and everything than something that I read a novel on. Like, and I do like to that's one thing that's fun about our business is a lot of what it is it's kind of a lot of half truths, half realities. Like a lot of our characters are based in who we are. They're not totally fictional. There's aspects of, there's a lot of people who bring in their real life spouses. Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella they're actually married and they have a child together, and they incorporate a little touches of that into their TV personas. Miz and his wife Maurice, same thing.
Yeah, they get their own show now.
Yeah, and so and that's reality TV, but like that's part of their real life too. And so like for me, I like to kind of bounce between those lines. I know I'll put over the next storyline, I'll put over our shows and everything, but I'll show you a picture of me and my wife at our house, and what we're decorating for Christmas, and
what you're drinking,
what I'm toasting to, that night, exactly. And so and you know what the funny thing is, as much as people love seeing what's happening on Smackdown next week, I feel like they engage more and respond more to what's going on in your home, in your life, and who you are as a person.
And I know Fred and I can always say thank you for helping spread the bourbon gospel to a lot of your followers as well, because it's, as we talked about, I mean, that's what Bourbon Beyond is. It's the fringe customers, these people that can really get into it. And if they see somebody that, you watched Mad Men and that's how you got into it, and then they see you and they're like, fucking Matt Aiden English does this. Like, this sounds really fucking cool. Like, I could do this too.
So it's an important piece in history, because what has happened in bourbon history is like, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. And that's been the story of it really, through the early 2000s. And now we're in a cycle where everyone's like, oh, it's going to be going down soon. And it absolutely would be going down if all we were doing was assessing bourbon by just, the glass of like what people are pouring. Right now we have this whole other angle. We have like tourism. We have this culture building around it. I mean, heck, you even pointed toward it, like this podcast, bringing culture to you in some ways. And now we have a lot of ways to connect to people, and you have all these niche and fringe audiences that can be, targeted through WWE or whatever. And and you bring an audience to bourbon that it would never get otherwise.
And that's what I want to widen that, because I think that's something that's kind of become cool I feel like a lot of different spirits now, but especially in bourbon and whiskey, is just like, and that's one of the things I really try to put through, like with my Instagram, and the YouTube and everything like that, is that, it's something to be appreciated. It's not like that, like the whole alcohol angle and everything. It's like you can feel about it how you want to, but it doesn't have, it's a very serious substance and everything, but it's something to be appreciated. There's a lot more than just a shot and getting wasted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so much more to it, and I love that, because I think it helps preach an appreciation, a responsibility, of getting rid of like certain stigmas that spirits and everything have. And like, I think it's also just really cool to have something in this world that gets further and further away from us, and more digital and technical and everything. And even bourbon is getting technical. I mean, there's so much science into the distillation and everything. But I tell this to everyone who will listen who doesn't know it. I'm like, there's something so cool about all this stuff, these fancy distilleries, all this, the chemistry, everything that mash bill down to the percentage of what you do. At the end of the day, you put it in a barrel and you sit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It sits there in a wooden warehouse or whatever for years. And that's nothing else you can do. There's no more science at that point. Just what's going on, and there's something so cool that in 2018 that there's still things done that way. It's old and new meeting in like this perfect symbiotic relationship that really appeals to me. Cause like I said, there's a little bit of a crotchety old man in me who's like, I don't want this newfangled stuff. But at the same time, I accept it. But so there's this kind of this awesome meeting of old and new that comes with this community and this world that I think the more people understand, I think they'll appreciate.
I couldn't have picked a better way to sort of wrap that up. That was a great summary of...
Very passionate.
Yeah, it really was. But I also want to give you an opportunity to plug all your social handles so people that want to know more about you, Matt, about Aiden, or whoever is and wrestling with whiskey, the whole you, like kind of give...
Whoever you are today, just tell us about it.
One of my 6 different personas or whatever I have it. No. So, of course, my primary handles, I'm on WWE Drama King on Twitter, is Aiden English, Drama King WWE on Instagram. But then you can find me Wrestling with Whiskey on Instagram, Wrestle Whiskey on Twitter, and the YouTube channel is Wrestling with Whiskey as well.
Have you been trying to grow your YouTube presence a little bit more too? Because I noticed you've been doing some blind reviews and stuff like that too.
Shoot blind. I blindfolded myself because I was alone, and that was the only way to do a blind tasting because I didn't have anybody to pour it for me. But yeah, I'm trying to go. We're doing all right. A little over something like 11,000 views. We got a little over 1,000 subscribers, stuff like that. So yeah, always just trying to grow that, do different things. So
nice,
real cool. So make sure you follow Matt and Aiden or whoever one of the 6 personalities today. But absolutely,
and don't forget to watch Smackdown.
Yes,
you know,
every Tuesday live on the USA Network,
and you can see him there on the big screen.
Getting that ass kicked.
Yeah, right there in the comfort of your own home. So make sure you do that. Also follow Bourbon Pursuit on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, as well as always follow Fred Minnick on all those social media channels. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to Bourbon Plus, the nation's best bourbon magazine. That's going to be the new tagline, I think, that we're going to put for it, right? Maybe international best bourbon magazine.
It is international.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any other show suggestions, people you'd like to see, questions you want answered, send us an email, team@bourbonpursuit.com. And if you do like what you hear, make sure you support the podcast, patreon.com/bourbonpursuit. And with that, Fred, Matt, thank you again for joining.
Absolutely.
And we'll see everybody next week.
thank you.
Cheers.